make my contribution, not to support, but actually to oppose the National Assembly Bill, Statutes, Law, Miscellaneous Amendment. Mr. Speaker, sir, last year there was an omnibus amendment bill from the National Assembly that introduced Section 9A of the Registration of Persons Act, which ended up introducing the famous Huduma number, which has never really proven to be anything. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've gone through this National Assembly bills, and I think this is a very bad way of trying to develop legislations in this country. What I've come to learn, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that in all these miscellaneous amendments, they come in either to create jobs, which in most cases end up being given to only one ethnic group, and really brings a lot of divisiveness in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've gone through these bills, and starting from the first one, which is on the Dairy Industries Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, and one of the things that really shocks me is that the National Assembly would sit down and come up with amendments to punish Kenyans, young dairy farmers, who probably have not even been enlightened on the need to register their industries. At the Act currently, one of the things which I thought was punitive is that these amendments on this Dairy Act now want, if we look at section, I think 33, delete the expression 2,000 shillings and substitute, therefore, the expression 1 million shillings or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year or both. In fact, this has a lot of typos that needs to be taken care of. It is wrong, Mr. Speaker, sir. I don't know whether we become so broke in this country such that we are looking at every avenue to be able to tax and punish people. You cannot impose so many taxes on Kenyans. There are people who have got one cow. They milk that cow, they sell the milk. It's not like the likes of my good friend, Senator Kirinyaga, who probably has got 1,000 cows. I mean, people should be treated differently. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think these sort of amendments are not amendments that we should support in this House. We should try and create wealth. I think the drafters of the Act saw it wise to make these penalties, affordable. If we are talking about coming up with penalties to penalize people who adulterate the milk, that one I'll support, Mr. Speaker, sir. I was hoping that the amendments that I would see, and I hope if this miscellaneous bill proceed, that debate we had yesterday notwithstanding, in terms of the, the status of our bills, which we sent to the National Assembly, if this proceeds, Mr. Speaker, sir, then would come up with various amendments. It would be important for us to be able to come up with amendments that mandate all dairy farmers, big dairy farmers, actually one that classify the different levels of dairy farmers. And then if, let's say, for instance, a dairy farmer is able to produce 200 or 300 liters of milk, it mandates them to have technology or equipment that can be able to detect, can measure the fat content, can measure the protein content, and also can be able to detect if there's any water added. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you go to the industry, and I'm quite vast in the industry because I'm in that industry, you will find that if you take milk from all those vendors, or rather the manufacturers or the processors of milk, and you subject it to a lactic test, you will find that the protein content and the fat content, which are supposed to rhyme together, vary. In fact, if you take a sample, and I'm not going to mention the name of the company, if you look at the fat content, you'll find that it will be 0.429. If you go to the protein content, is 0.24. There, it will show you, any scientist or any person who processes the milk will tell you that milk has been alterated. And then when you look at the water added, you will be able to see that they have added about 0.257 or 0.3% of in the milk. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the amendment that we should be seeing coming from the National Assembly, or any amendments to amend the Dairies Act, it is not to create authorities, it's not to penalize dairy farmers, but amendments that will ensure that whatever produce, whatever products that we give to our people is of high quality. The reason why a lot of people are dying of cancer in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, is because our standards, our beauty of standards, are really not taking seriously, their jobs. I support young farmers selling milk, but it is wrong when people decide to adulterate, either to preserve the milk for a longer period, and when we have an act of parliament, there's nothing that protects the consumers on that. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll oppose this punitive measures on this bill, and I hope that we can be able to bring, more sound amendments to the Act. Some which are about to encourage young farmers to be able to create young businesses, but not to, sort of like decide it's only a few people who can be able to start the dairy industry. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other bills which this Miscellaneous Amendment Act tend to amend, which I'll comment on, are bills that deals with the issue of public finance management. I saw here, Mr. Speaker, sir, an amendment which is sought. And when you read it carefully, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this one on the PPDA, the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, I don't suppose that this is an amendment that should be brought in through an omnibus bill. I think there are three bills, and I agree with Senator Mutula Kilonzo, that should be looked at carefully. One is a bill that deals with procurement. The second bill is a bill that deals with public finance management. Any amendments that comes in, I can bet you, Mr. Speaker, sir, it could be somebody trying to sneak in something. And this is why I keep on saying, sometimes we go out there and we start complaining that the government is not doing this, the government is punishing its citizens. But you'll find that, Mr. Speaker, sir, in most cases, we, the elected legislators, are not here to be able to scrutinize such amendments. We come and complain later when they become an act of parliament. I know all of us are busy, but it's about time that we take our job seriously to look at these amendments which are coming up. If you find that somebody is trying to sneak in an amendment through this omnibus bill to ensure that any job that they do, they are paid directly. There's a place I read here that money is paid directly to the contractors. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I oppose this bill, and I hope that, subject to your ruling on the status of this bill, we can be able to really sit down and maybe send the bill back to National Assembly and demand that any amendment that has to do with the dairy industry, number one, Mr. Speaker, sir, has got to do with the issue of quality control. It has got to do with the issue of protecting farmers, but not to create jobs for certain individuals. That's number one, Mr. Speaker, sir. On the issue of public finance management, we should never entertain in this House an omnibus bill that brings in 3 acts of parliament and amends different provisions that you will find, if they are scrutinized well, they are not good for this country. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I oppose.